You are listening to the Governor's Utah Economic Summit 2009. The Governor's Address is brought to you by Zions Bank. We haven't forgotten who keeps us in business.
Now, a year ago, when we had this gathering, the national and the global economic backdrop was bad, and it has worsened, to be sure. We all have to understand where we are in this cycle. At this time a year ago, housing prices were falling fast. JP Morgan Chase had just paid $2 a share for Bear Stearns, remember that? And the nation had begun to shed jobs, about 350,000 from its peak at that point. And we began to descend, this free fall that we've been in ever since. And we're 17 months into the recession, and you can feel that there is some momentum being generated. I think the economists in the group would say that we're probably bouncing along the bottom a few months to go, and we're going to start seeing some real light at the end of the tunnel. But I'm reminded a little bit of that famous flight that was on British Airways, piloted by Captain Moody back in June of 1982. And if you know your aviation history, you'll know exactly the story that I'm talking about. It took off from London, and it was en route to Sydney, Australia, back in 1982. Landed in Singapore, my old home, refueled, and then went on its way on its final leg. And as it was flying over this vast archipelago called Indonesia, 13,000 different islands, it was flying over West Java, specifically Mount Gelongong, and it encountered sulfuric ash that had been pumped into the air, the atmosphere, by a volcanic explosion the day before. And an amazing thing happened to this massive Boeing 747. Not one, not two, not three, but all four of the engines died because it had sucked in this ash. And Captain Moody, the pilot of the 747, in what must have been the masterpiece of British understatement, got on the PA system, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a small problem. We have lost power to all four of our engines. We are doing our damnedest to get them restarted. We hope that this has not caused you any inconvenience," as the plane descends over West Java. And then an amazing thing happened. Not one, not two, not three, but all four of those massive engines, General Electric or Rolls-Royce, whatever they were, fired up again, and off the jet went safely to Sydney, Australia. We're somewhere in that descent. Engines are being fired up, restarted, probably strengthened and expanded in the case of Utah, and we're beginning to move forward. And we're going to regain altitude, and we're going to take our rightful spot as the greatest economy in the United States. That's where we belong, and that's where we will be. But we have to understand where we've been to kind of understand what the road is going to look like as we move forward. In the words of our Federal Reserve Chairman, Ben Bernanke, when he met with a group of governors not long ago, he said, "We've been through some mighty bad times. In fact, this last September," you'll remember that was a pretty bleak time economically for this country, "the United States came closer to the precipice of the global economic abyss than any time in human history." Pretty stark words from the head of the Federal Reserve, who generally is a pretty balanced and taciturn individual. Monday, September 15th, the day that Lehman failed, will likely come to be known, in our generation at least, as the day of infamy. The collapse has been global. As many of you know who are part of the global marketplace, growth has slowed even in the largest of the emerging economies. China's down. The World Bank just revised their numbers twice now. India is down. Japan's export numbers are down considerably. Iceland's financial system collapsed completely, bringing about a total regime change there. The first bank in Spain was bailed out just yesterday. The Nikkei average in Japan hit its lowest level recently since 1982. Since the recession began, the U.S. has shed over 4 million jobs. Over $19 trillion in wealth has been wiped out in the housing and stock markets. State budget deficits in all the states, all 50, grew to over $50 billion. The federal government has taken unprecedented action through the rolling out of $9 trillion in so-called bailout or guarantee packages in an economy that is $14.5 trillion in size in terms of our GDP each year. Our state hasn't been immune. We're expecting to close out fiscal year 09 with revenues down 13%. A year ago, when we last gathered at our economic summit, our employment growth was about 1.7%, an increase of about 21,000 jobs over the previous year. This go around, we're posting a decline of 1.6%, a loss of about 26,000 jobs over the previous year. Our unemployment rate has increased from a low of 2.7%, which was the lowest in the United States in 2007, to its current rate of 5.1%, which is still among the lowest in the United States. But let us not forget where our fundamentals are, because in the end, when the storm dissipates, as it will eventually, capital and talent and businesses are going to look at our state's fundamentals. And they're going to make long-term investment decisions based upon what we look like and who we are and what our commitment is to our future. Don't forget that Utah still has a AAA bond rating from all the rating agencies, S&P's, Moody's, and Fitch. This means that our outlook is stable, which is a key term. Utah is one of only a handful of states, today only 6, who are solidly and consistently rated as being the most fiscally sound in the entire country. So would I trade places with any other state in America? No way, no how. We have everything we need to support our future. Most important, though, is when this does settle, and when the storm does dissipate, will we speak to confidence in the marketplace by attracting brainpower and capital, or will we cause it to flee? I think we're going to do okay. Utah has, in recent years, been a safe haven for capital, and I think we are poised and positioned to maintain that position. So if Utah were a stock, I'd have to say we'd give it a buy recommendation. The Kauffman Foundation recently ranked Utah as number 6 in the nation in 2008 for venture capital. We all know that venture capital is the lifeblood of emerging companies and very important to the lives of entrepreneurs here in the state. The ALEC study, the American Legislative Exchange Council, just ranked Utah as the most competitive economy in the nation and ranked Utah as number 1 in the category of states that will be the fastest to recover. The most recent Kauffman report gave our state, again for a second year, number 1 as the most dynamic economy in the United States. Number 1 in investor patents, number 2 in terms of our overall online population size. The Milken Institute, another respected organization, gave us number 1 for technology concentration and dynamism. And Forbes magazine recently cited 3 cities as being among the best performing cities in the entire United States. Number 1, Provo-Orem. Number 3, Salt Lake City. Number 18, Ogden-Clearfield. Are we positioned to move forward so that all of our engines are fired up and ready to go as we move into the future? No question about it. Most importantly, and what I wanted to convey to you more than anything else, is we are focused, laser-like, on what you feel is most important in the business community. When we ran for office 5 years ago, we did a very interesting survey of a couple thousand businesses in the state, just sort of a random survey to see what was on your minds and what you thought needed to be fixed in the state to really make us a best-in-class state and to help your individual firms. We came up with our top 10 list that we've worked on for the last 4 to 5 years, and I think we've implemented every single one of those 10 points. We did the same thing again last year. And we went out to about 2,000 businesses again. And we heard very carefully to what you had to say about where the state was going and what you wanted to see happen. And among that list and the things that we have been working on, and I've got to thank Representative Garn and President Wattops for being a big part of bringing this about. Energy independence. You said we want energy independence. We want to make sure that we have a multiplicity of sources from which we are drawing energy. We want predictability in the energy sector. Well, most recently, legislation was passed that will make, I believe, our state the premier destination for renewable energy. We've created economic incentives for clean energy producers and those who manufacture clean energy equipment like solar panels, wind turbines, nanotechnologies that will improve the efficiency of energy production. And then we've gone on to create a state bonding authority to help supplement that will help to overcome the significant hurdle of capitalizing the construction of renewable energy transmission projects. We need infrastructure, we need grid, we need distribution capability. Now we have the ability in place to make that happen. We heard from you that healthcare was a significant issue that we all need to tackle together. And if our speaker was here, I'm not sure that he is, I would laud him along with Sheldon Kilpack for the remarkable job that they have done in bringing a multiplicity of players together in the area of healthcare to try to reform our system, to take costs out, to provide transparency and predictability, to create something that truly is affordable and accessible, and to be able to take that gap from 13% who are uninsured in this state down to a much lower level, which we all know we're capable of doing. Healthcare. In our world today, only 40% of our businesses are providing healthcare to their employees. And to think that we are now providing the ability whereby businesses can collaborate with employees by offering a defined contribution toward healthcare, we are moving in a direction that is very, very positive for healthcare generally. Access to capital. Finally, you have stressed that access to capital is an important thing for all that you do. You've asked for it, and we've done our best to focus on that particular area. The fund of funds, participating firms so far have invested $127 million in Utah companies. And their syndicates have invested an additional $238 million, creating more than 1,000 new high-paying jobs in this state. We're on the move in terms of doing everything we can in attracting capital, but realizing all the while that we will be evaluated by our environment, by our competitive environment that either speaks to the attraction of capital or that scares it away. Let me just run through 3 or 4 things that I want you all to kind of walk away with that also were part of what you have been talking about for the last few years that I know were very, very important to you. Number 1, we've heard for many years about incentives for local companies and why we can't do for local companies what for years we've been doing for a lot of out-of-state companies. Well, that dynamic has finally changed. And I want to report to you that more than half of all the incentives offered this past year were to local companies for significant expansion right here in our state. And some of them are here with us today.